If I told you that there are people who have stored rice for more than 30 years without it spoiling, would you believe me? It seems impossible, but the Amish have made it a reality with methods that are as simple as they are effective. While many struggle with weevils, humidity, and even rice that loses flavor over time, they have perfected techniques that ensure each grain remains intact without chemicals or artificial preservatives. Do you want to know how? Today I'll show you 5 tried and true ways so you can store rice for decades without it suffering the ravages of time. I promise you that after seeing this, you will never store rice the same way again. This method involves cooking the rice and then extracting all the moisture so that it can be stored for years without risk of pests or deterioration. The more traditional Amish dehydrate the rice in the sun on fine meshes or in wood-fired ovens at low temperatures. But if you have electricity, you can do it with a dehydrator or a conventional oven. To start, cook the rice with just water, without oil or salt. Use a ratio of 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of water and cook until the grain is completely soft. Once ready, spread it on a tray in a thin layer to prevent it from caking. If you use a dehydrator, set it to 57 degrees and leave it for 2.5 hours, checking that the beans are completely dry. If you prefer to use an oven, set it to 50 degrees. Leave the door ajar, placing a wooden spoon to allow moisture to escape, and wait between 2 and 3 hours. The rice is ready when it feels hard and sounds crumbly to the touch. Let it cool completely before storing in airtight jars. This way it is preserved for years without the need for refrigeration. To rehydrate it, just add hot water or microwave it with a little water for 1.5 minutes. With this method, you'll have rice ready to eat in minutes and free of pests. This method is ideal if you want rice ready to use in seconds. But if you don't have a dehydrator or want to use the oven, don't worry. In method 2, I'll show you a vacuum storage technique that only requires jars and heat. This method uses heat to remove moisture and oxygen inside a glass jar, creating a vacuum seal that keeps the rice in perfect condition for decades. The more traditional Amish do this by heating the jars in wood-burning ovens and letting them cool slowly so that the change in temperature seals the lid. With electricity, the same effect can be achieved with a conventional oven. First, wash and sterilize the glass jars with hot soapy water, making sure they are completely dry before using them. Preheat the oven to 225 degrees. Using a funnel, fill the jars with rice up to the neck, leaving a small space at the top. Shake the jars gently to settle the beans and reduce the amount of trapped air. Then, place the jars in the oven on a heat-resistant tray. Leave them in the oven for 90 minutes. When the time is up, carefully remove the jars and place them on a towel to avoid thermal shock. Make sure there are no drafts in the kitchen. As they cool, the air inside the jars will contract, creating a vacuum that will seal the lids. To verify that the seal is correct, press the center of the lid. If it makes no sound or sinks, it is well sealed. With this method, your rice can last up to 30 years well sealed. But what if you don't have an oven? Don't worry, in the next method I will teach you a trick with fire that achieves the same vacuum effect in a simple way and without electricity. This method removes oxygen inside a large plastic bucket with a tight-fitting lid using controlled fire. The Amish use well-sealed wooden or clay buckets, but at home it can be done with a food-grade plastic bucket with a firm lid. Here we will use a bucket that you can find at any hardware store. However, if you don't have one, don't worry. In method 4 I will show you a cheaper alternative made with materials that anyone can get without spending a cent. First, the bucket must be completely clean and dry. Several bay leaves are placed at the bottom as they help repel insects and prevent infestations. The bucket is then filled with old rice, stored for at least a year. Fresh rice is not recommended because it contains more moisture and can generate fungus over time. While the bucket is filling, more bay leaves can be interspersed for added protection. To eliminate oxygen, take a piece of cotton, soak it with alcohol, and place it inside a metal lid or a small fire-resistant container. It is lit with a match and quickly placed inside the bucket. Immediately afterwards, the lid of the bucket is placed without closing it completely, allowing the fire to consume the oxygen. When the flame goes out on its own, close the lid tightly and seal with adhesive tape around the edge to reinforce the airtightness. It is labeled with the date and stored in a cool, dry, and ventilated place. If the seal is kept intact, the rice can be kept in good condition for several years. Now let's go with the most economical option. This method uses a jug of water and alcohol to eliminate oxygen inside the container, preventing the proliferation of insects and keeping the rice in good condition for years. To start, choose a very clean and completely dry plastic water jug. It is important that it does not have traces of moisture, as this could affect the conservation of the rice. Fill the jug with rice, shaking it slightly so that the grains settle and reduce the amount of air trapped inside. Soak a small piece of cotton in alcohol and place it inside the jug without touching the rice. The alcohol will consume the remaining oxygen and prevent insects from appearing. Immediately afterwards, close the bottle lid firmly to prevent air from entering. To ensure a tight seal, cover the lid with heavy-duty tape. Store the bottle in a cool, dry place away from direct light and heat sources. With this method, rice can be preserved in perfect conditions for up to 5 years without risk of infestation or deterioration. Easy, practical, and without jars. Now you have your rice well stored for years. But what if I told you that you can also turn it into a crunchy and delicious snack? Don't miss the last method, it will surprise you. This method allows you to turn rice into thin sheets, similar to those used in Asian cuisine. The Amish do this process manually, drying the mixture in the sun on clean cloths or wooden trays. At home, it can be made with a microwave, dehydrator, or air fryer to speed up the process. To prepare, mix 2 tablespoons of rice flour with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and 4 tablespoons of water. Beat well until you obtain a homogeneous mixture without lumps. If a finer texture is desired, it can be strained before using. Spread the mixture in a thin layer on a non-stick surface, such as a silicone mold or wax paper. Distribute evenly with a spatula to avoid thick or uneven areas. To dry without electricity, the Amish leave the mixture in the sun until it hardens and peels off easily. At home, it can be dried in the microwave in 30-second intervals until firm. You can also use a dehydrator at a low temperature, between 50 and 55 degrees Celsius, until it hardens completely. Another option is to use an air fryer at minimum temperature for a few minutes. When the rice paper sheet is dry, it is carefully removed. It can be used in recipes or fried in hot oil to make chicharron daeras. Store in a dry place in an airtight container. Now you know how to preserve rice without weevils with these Amish methods. But if you want to continue strengthening your pantry and be prepared for any situation, click on the playlist and discover how the Amish store other essential foods for years.